Good day, everyone. Welcome to General Biology 1. This discussion covers the week 2 topics for this first semester. This is your mom, Jeremy, your lecturer for this session. To be guided with the flow of our discussion, we have here our objective, which is to identify the different characteristics of living things, wherein we will explain the essentiality of each trait for all living organisms, be it a plant or an animal. To start with, when can we say that something is alive? What is life? How do we usually define life? Not all scientists agree exactly about what makes up life. Many characteristics describe most living things. However, with most of the characteristics, we can think of one or more examples that would seem to break the rule. One example of this is a cat moves, but so does a car and a cloud. That's why biologists define life by listing characteristics that living things must share. With this, organism that has all the characteristics of life is considered to be alive. Now, let's start the discussion of the different characteristics of living things. First characteristic is that living organisms are highly organized with coordinated structures that consist of one or more cells. This characteristic encompasses the levels of organizational of life or the levels of biological organization, wherein it shows the hierarchy of structure from smallest to largest entity in this planet. As you can see in the picture, we have the atom, which is the smallest unit of chemical elements. Once atom and another atom will be combined together, we can form now molecules. If these molecules will again combine together, we can form now macromolecules or the large molecules. These macromolecules are present to the different organelles inside the cell. And these little organs will then form into a cell, be it a plant cell or an animal cell. If these cells will work together to perform a specific function, the product will be tissues. If the system of tissues will work together on a larger scale to do a certain jobs within an animal's body, the result will be organs. If this group of organs will work together to perform specific bodily functions, such as breathing, this will be called now as organ system. And if these different organ systems such as respiratory system, nervous system, endocrine system will work together, we can now form an organism. Then, if group of multiple organisms of the same species within an area are being found, we can call them as population. If different species in a certain area, we can term it as community. And if this community will interact to its environment, we can call it now as the ecosystem. And lastly, all ecosystems on Earth is now termed as the biosphere or generally the Earth itself. Now, for us to identify the different levels of organizational of life, I will be giving examples to each level. For example, atom, we have hydrogen and oxygen. Both of them are two different types of atoms. Next, molecule, two atoms of hydrogen plus one atom of oxygen is equal to H2O or water molecule. Macromolecules, we have carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, enzymes, and nucleic acids. Organelles, we have nucleus, cell wall, cell membrane, ribosomes, chloroplast, mitochondria, and other little organs inside the cell. Cell, we have epithelial cells, brain cells, skin cells. Tissues, we have connective tissues, neural tissues. Organ, we have the brain, skin, heart, lungs, kidney. Organ system, we have integumentary system, circulatory system, respiratory system, endocrine system. Organism, we have human being. Population, we have lion. Community, we can have a population of giraffe, lion, monkey, and crocodile in Manila Zoo. Ecosystem in general, we can use pond, combination of water and fishes. And lastly, we have biosphere, which is the earth itself. The second ability of living organisms is to reproduce. The continuity of life and survival of each species in the Earth's biosphere is entirely dependent on reproduction. Reproduction is the creation of new individuals, which is exactly from the same kind. Living organisms use different modes of reproduction depending on the complexity of their form and structure. Simple organisms such as protist and bacterium, which is in the left side of your screen, reproduce through asexual reproduction. This reproduction involves one parent only, meaning the exchange of genetic material is not evident. In simplest terms, this mode does not require fertilization of egg cell by a sperm cell, nor the actual involvement of two sex cells. A good example of this is the so-called binary fission, which is being exemplified by the picture under asexual reproduction. Binary fission is a process wherein a bacterium, which is a single cell, divides into two identical daughter cells. On the contrary, sexual reproduction requires the participation of two sex cells from female and male parent via the process called fertilization. Fertilization occurs when the male sex cells fused with the female sex cells. Take note that this mode of reproduction is very advantageous compared to asexual because it allows genetic recombination. The third ability of organisms is to grow. Growth that is due to cell division process, wherein it is called to be a quantitative change for living things because our size increases. Remember that living organisms show internal growth, and this method is called intussusception. But also take note that non-living things can also grow by adding similar materials to their outer surface, wherein it is called as accretion. Accretion is evident to rocks. Growth that is shown in the screen is an example of a baby turning into an adult. Another one is a seed that will sprout and form a seedling and will grow into a larger plant. Fourth is the ability of living things to respond to stimulus or stimuli. First, let us define stimulus and response. Stimulus is anything that causes an organism to react, wherein Response is any change an organism makes because of the changes in the environment. Take note that we actually have two types of responses. It can be either a positive response or a negative response. Positive response is when the movement is towards the stimulus, while negative response is a movement away the stimulus. As you can see in the image, the boy accidentally touches the object that is extremely hot, and of course, his response is to move his hands away from the source of heat. This is an example of negative response. How about in plants? This slide shows how plants respond to stimuli. Say for example, the thigmotrophism of macaria. If you will touch the macaria plant, it will eventually close because this plant is in negative response to touch. How about the other photo? This photo shows phototrophism, wherein the stimulus is the sunlight by the term photo. This plant bends towards the light source. Aside from phototrophism and thigmotrophism, we also have photoperiodism, wherein it involves the length of daytime and nighttime. Fifth is the ability to maintain balance or homeostasis. In order to function properly, cells need to have appropriate conditions such as proper temperature, pH or power of hydrogen, and even the concentration of different chemicals. These conditions may change from one moment to the next. Homeostasis is the ability of an organism to maintain constant internal conditions. For example, an organism needs to regulate body temperature through a process known as thermoregulation. This occurs to organisms that live in cold climates such as polar bears. These organisms have structure for insulation such as feathers and fats. While in hot climates, organisms have methods such as perspiration in humans that help them to shed excess body heat. From the picture, we can see that when the temperature drops, the heater turns on, and when the temperature gets too hot, the air condition turns on. 6 is living organisms are capable of evolving. Living organisms gradually change over many generations in a process called evolution. Evolution ensures that organisms are fully adapted to their surroundings and as well as making others extinct. An example of this is when early humans evolved in Africa about 5 million years ago from ape-like ancestors. These ancestors moved from one place to another, wherein they evolved new features such as the ability to walk upright. And lastly is the ability to undergo metabolism process. Metabolism is a term that is used to describe all chemical reactions involved in maintaining the living state of the cells and the organisms. It is divided into two. We have the catabolism by the word cat, which means breakdown of molecules to obtain energy, and anabolism by the term ad, which is the building of large molecules that requires energy. Meaning to say, when we speak about metabolism, it encompasses the ability of living organisms to use and process energy from the environment. These are just some of the different characteristics of of organisms for them to be considered as an alive entity. We must remember that living thing is distinguished from a dead thing by the multiplicity of changes at any moment taking place in it by Herbert Spencer.